You know, high school is supposed to be full of fun memories, friends, laughter, maybe a little drama. But some stories people share about their schools, they sound more like something straight out of a horror movie. Tonight, I am going to tell you about 4 creepy high school horror stories you definitely shouldn't watch alone. Now, I'm not saying all schools are haunted, but when you hear the same rumors whispered in hallways for years, it makes you wonder. Sometimes, students carry stories that are way too detailed to just be urban legends. And when the lights go out and the hallways are empty, that's when things get unsettling. These stories aren't just about shadows or creaky doors. They involve experiences students swore were real. Whether it's unexplained footsteps, strange voices, or something darker, these tales will make you think twice about being alone at school after dark. The scariest part? All of these stories came from real people. They swore these events happened during their own high school years. So, grab your headphones, turn off the lights if you're brave, and let's dive into story number 1. But remember, I warned you these aren't your typical campfire tales. These are high school horror stories that blur the line between rumor and reality. Let's start with a story about a late-night detention that took a very strange turn. So, this first story comes from a kid who stayed after school for detention. It was supposed to be just 1 hour, but the teacher supervising him got called away, leaving him completely alone in the classroom. No big deal, right? Well, not exactly. The school was old, with creaky wooden floors and buzzing fluorescent lights. At first, he thought it was kind of cool having the whole place to himself, but as the minutes ticked by, he started hearing faint tapping sounds coming from the hallway. He figured it was just the janitor making rounds. But when he peeked out, the hallway was completely empty. The tapping kept going, slow and steady, almost like footsteps, but no one was there. Trying to shake it off, he went back to his seat and pulled out his phone. But right as he did, the classroom door creaked open by itself. No wind, no one standing there, just the door slowly swinging wide open. He got up, a little freaked out now, and walked to the door to close it. But before his hand even touched the knob, he swore he saw a shadow move across the opposite wall. And here's the thing, there was nothing in the hallway that could have made it. His heart was racing. He backed into the room, grabbed his stuff, and thought about just leaving. But then he heard a whisper. It wasn't clear, but it sounded like someone saying his name, dragging it out slowly. Now he was panicking. He knew he was alone. Teacher is gone. Janitor usually on the other side of the building. But that whisper came from right behind him. He spun around, and of course, nobody was there. He bolted out of the classroom and rushed down the hallway. The lights above him flickered as he ran, buzzing louder than usual. Every step he took echoed like someone was chasing him. But when he glanced back, the hall was empty. Finally, he burst out the side doors and didn't stop running until he was outside the school gates. When he looked back, the building stood completely still. No sign of movement, no sound. Just dark windows staring back at him. The next day, he told his friends what happened. Some laughed, but others admitted they'd heard the same whispers during detention. Maybe it was just the old building playing tricks, or maybe someone didn't want students staying there after hours. The second story comes from a student athlete who used to stay late for basketball practice. One evening, after the rest of the team had gone home, he realized he left his bag in the locker room. It should have been a quick grab and go, but it turned into something he'd never forget. The locker room was quiet, almost too quiet. The usual smell of sweat and sneakers lingered, but the silence felt heavier than usual. As he walked in, he heard the faint clatter of a locker door shutting. Thinking it was maybe another player, he called out. No answer. The rows of lockers stretched down the room, and the fluorescent lights hummed above him. Still, he kept walking, his footsteps echoing against the tiled floor. Then, out of nowhere, another locker slammed shut. This time it was closer, just a few steps away. He froze. There was no way someone else was in there. He'd seen everyone leave. He picked up his pace, grabbed his bag, and was ready to bolt. But as he slung it over his shoulder, the air grew cold, like someone had opened a freezer door. His breath fogged in front of him, and then, he heard it. A low chuckle. Not playful, not friendly, more like someone mocking him. The sound seemed to bounce off the walls, coming from everywhere at once. Heart pounding, he shouted, "Who's there?" But the room answered only with silence. He started toward the exit, every hair on his arms standing on end. Just before reaching the door, one last thing happened. A locker right beside him swung wide open with a violent slam, as if someone had kicked it from the inside. He didn't wait around to see more. He sprinted out of there, leaving the door hanging open behind him. Later, when he told his coach, the man just shook his head and said the locker room had a history. Apparently, students had complained about strange noises there for years. Whether it was some kind of prank or something supernatural, he never stayed late alone again. And to this day, he swears he can still hear that mocking laugh if he thinks about it too long. This next story comes from a girl who loved staying after school to practice piano in the old music room. The room hadn't been used for official classes in years, but the grand piano was still there, gathering dust in the corner. She enjoyed the quiet, no teachers, no classmates, just her and the keys. But one evening, as the sun set and shadows stretched across the room, she noticed the piano sounded off. The notes echoed strangely, almost like someone else was playing with her. At first, She thought it was her imagination, but then she stopped playing and the piano didn't. A few keys pressed down on their own, soft and deliberate, like invisible fingers testing the sound. She froze, staring at the keys. Nobody else was in the room, and the door was locked from the inside. Still, the piano played 3 slow notes, echoing through the empty building. She slammed the lid shut and grabbed her bag, ready to run. But just as she reached the door, a violin string plucked itself from the storage shelf behind her. No one had touched it in years, yet the sound was sharp and clear. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the doorknob. And that's when she heard it, a faint humming, like someone softly singing along with a tune she didn't recognize. The sound followed her as she stepped into the hallway, growing louder for a moment, then suddenly cutting off like someone flipped a switch. The silence afterward was even worse. When she told her teacher the next day, he just smiled nervously and said, "You're not the first one to hear things in that room." Apparently, the music department had been moved years ago. After too many complaints, her friends dared her to go back, but she refused. She said the way those piano keys moved without anyone touching them made her feel like something or someone was still waiting in that room. To this day, the old music room stays locked, except for the occasional janitor who has to dust it off. And rumor has it, if you walk by late at night, you can still hear faint piano notes drifting down the hallway. The final story comes from a student who worked part-time helping the janitor clean the school. One night, he was told to bring supplies down to the basement storage. Most kids didn't even know the school had a basement, but he quickly understood why. The stairway was narrow, with a single flickering bulb above. As he carried the supplies down, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following him. Each step he took echoed, but he swore he heard another set of footsteps, just a half beat behind. He reached the bottom and set the supplies down. The basement was filled with old desks, broken chairs, and boxes stacked high. It smelled damp, like the air hadn't moved in years. That's when he heard a soft knock. It came from the far side of the room, where an old wooden door stood half open. He called out, but no one answered. The knock came again, louder this time, like something or someone wanted out. Curiosity got the better of him. He walked toward the door, his flashlight shaking in his hand. When he pushed it open, the room inside was empty, except for a single chair facing the wall. Nothing else. He turned to leave, but then the door slammed shut behind him. The sound echoed through the basement. He pulled at the knob, but it wouldn't budge. And that's when he heard breathing. Slow, heavy breathing, just over his shoulder. He spun around, flashlight darting across the empty space. Nothing. The chair hadn't moved. The walls were bare. But the breathing didn't stop. It grew closer, like someone was standing inches away, invisible in the dark. Panic surged through him. He pounded on the door until finally, it swung open. He stumbled back into the basement, gasping for air. The moment he stepped out, the breathing stopped. Complete silence. He never went back down those stairs again. Later, when he asked the janitor about it, the man simply shook his head and said, "That basement has its own history. Best to leave it alone." And ever since, he swore that if you stand at the top of those stairs late at night, you can still hear faint knocking coming from below, almost like something waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to open that door again. And that's it for creepy high school horror stories that still give me chills every time I think about them. Whether it was the whispers in detention, the laughter in the locker room, the music room, piano, or the basement breathing. Each one has its own way of making you wonder what's really hiding in those empty halls. High schools are supposed to be places of learning and fun, but when the sun goes down, they can feel like something else entirely. Maybe it's just our imagination, or maybe these old buildings carry more than just history in their walls. What do you think? Are these just spooky stories passed around to scare students? Or could there be some truth behind them? I'd love to hear what you believe, so drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more creepy tales. I've got plenty more coming, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Thanks for watching. And remember, next time you find yourself alone in a quiet school hallway, listen carefully, because sometimes the scariest things aren't the ones you can see, they're the ones you can hear. Sleep well if you can.